A different team handling the stuff today. About a month ago, Jenny's brother, Bruce, went to hospital for some tests to check out his heart. I was just thinking, Bruce is a name that's fallen out of favour these days, if you know the ad. To his surprise, they kept him in hospital and operated on him the next day to put in 3 stents. And almost immediately he was celebrating that he hadn't felt so good for years. The word heart is found in the Bible about 760 times, and this suggests to me that God cares about the spiritual state of our hearts. So today I thought we might do a kind of heart health check. It's okay, I'm not going to come around to each of you. If you go on a 3-day Emmaus walk, there are 5 talks each day on dimensions of the life of a disciple of Jesus. And the first talk on the very first day, about 9 a.m, helps us think about our priorities in life. It really asks, where are our hearts? And some good questions help us think about what matters in our lives. What do we give our time to? What absorbs our energy? What do we spend our time thinking about? What do we spend our money on? In his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus instructed, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where thieves break in and steal and moths corrupt and so on, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Jesus was challenging the crowds in Galilee to reflect on what they had set their hearts on. What mattered most to them in life? What was the condition of their hearts? And then the Alpha course, which many of us are completing today, asks, is there more to life than this? Is there more to life than what we can sense with our senses? It makes the point that so many of us are so busy with the everyday business of living that we don't get to ask the deeper questions. It's suggesting maybe we glide over the surface of our superficial lives without taking time to ask what really matters. Why are we living? What are we here for? In one dimension of the Alpha film series that we're using is there are brief responses of people, and I think it's in the streets of Sydney, to some of these big questions. And sometimes these people have struggled to say what really matters to them, even what they're looking for in life. They're so caught up in their everyday routines with the result that they have little time to consider the big picture. So here's a big question, a question worth asking. What is in our hearts? What is our heart's cry? What do we yearn for? What really matters to us in life? And today I hope we'll reflect on the state of our hearts. It won't be my fault if you don't remember the word heart after the service. When Jesus heard that John the Baptist, his cousin, had been killed by King Herod, he deliberately went alone by boat to a deserted place. He wanted to have time alone. However, great crowds followed him on foot. And Matthew tells us that when he went ashore at this point of the Sea of Galilee, he saw a great crowd and he had compassion for them and cured their sick. The literal meaning of the Greek word is that Jesus was moved with compassion. His compassion led to action. And his compassion didn't end with his works of healing. When his disciples wanted to send the crowd away to get food, Jesus, in his compassion, said, "No, you feed them." And they balked at the challenge. And Jesus finally fed them all, broke bread, and somehow acted upon those 2 fish and had enough food with 12 baskets left over after feeding 5,000 men plus women and children. In his teaching, Jesus reiterated the command of Moses to love our neighbour as we love ourselves. Jesus repeatedly loved his neighbour. He practiced what he preached. He showed compassion to all people. We probably all remember some time in our lives when we were on the receiving end of an act of compassion. And my mind immediately went to Scotland. Jenny and I were in a camper van on the west coast of Scotland. It was probably in the winter, and it was dark at 4 o'clock. And we had a puncture in this camper van, and when we got the jack out of the car, or the van, it was a little thing about this big, and you wondered whether it'd be able to lift the van. So Jenny decided to make some soup and have some dinner while we were trying to sort out what to do. Well, this guy came along in a ute, pulled up on the other side of the road, came across, said, "What's the problem?" And he looked at the jack and he mocked it in effect and said, "Look, I'll get something better." And he got his jack out of his car. He came and jacked up our van. I said, "Would you like a cup of soup? Jenny's just made one." He said, "No." I said, "Can I give you £20 because that's what it would cost me to get this fixed in a place in town?" He said, "Don't be daft." He drove off. It was his gift of love. He was going back to the islands. Jesus showed compassion. He was like that young man. In contrast with the compassionate heart of Jesus, some people carry heavy, burdened hearts. They are weighed down with the mistakes, the wrong choices, the bad behaviours of the past. When we were in Cairns, I was preparing a couple for ministry, a mature couple. He'd been served in Vietnam as a veteran. And he confessed in our conversation that from a military helicopter he had shot and killed civilians. And I tried to tell him that God would forgive him for that, and he said, "Oh no, God couldn't forgive me." And he said, well no, I concluded that really the problem was he couldn't forgive himself. But if God can forgive us for something, why don't we forgive ourselves for what we've done? And I think to myself, if only I pursued with him a little more. I don't think I was mature enough in ministry then, but perhaps I could have persuaded him to pray the prayer of King David in Psalm 51. You may remember the story how King David saw Bathsheba on the roof bathing on another roof nearby and decided he wanted her as his wife, decided to have Uriah put in the front line of battle to be killed, and then took Bathsheba to himself. Well, he carried that sin with him until he prayed this prayer. He said to God, "My sin is ever before me." And so he prayed for God to have mercy on him according to his steadfast love, not according to what he deserved, not according to what David deserved. But he said, "Blot out my transgressions. They're too much for me. I can't let go of that." And his prayer reached a climax when he prayed, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and put a new and right spirit within me. I don't like the spirit I've got. I need to change." And David had some confidence in God's forgiveness when he declared in his prayer, "The sacrifice acceptable to you, God, is a broken spirit." His spirit was broken. "A broken and a contrite heart, O God, you will not despise." It's not about us being able to atone for our own sins. It's about us being able to name our brokenness to God. And God forgave King David and his heart was clean. So we may have compassionate hearts. We may have hearts crippled by the sins of the past. But then some of us have fearful hearts. We may be often anxious or insecure or afraid. if we've grown up with family conflict or abuse or bullying, if the significant people in our lives have demanded perfection of us, if we have experienced racism or lived in war zones, many such experiences can nurture fearful hearts. And sometimes even very small things can make us fearful. We had a lady living next door to us, a real estate agent, a Jew by race, who had a phobia. That's worse than fear. A phobia about Granny's cloak moths. And she had her whole house painted white, and she wanted white between the bricks, mortar between the bricks, thank you. And she was cranky with the builder when the builder put in grey mortar, not white mortar, between the bricks, because if the Granny's cloak moth won't land on a white surface, they'll only land on dark surfaces. And she had a fear, and she'd ring up, and once she rang up and said, "Neil, there's one in my garage, can you come and kill it?" And then when I killed it, she said, "Make sure it's dead." And it is. That was a phobia, a fear that she carried through her life. But think about Jacob and his twin brother, Esau. You may remember as a young man, Jacob exploited Esau's hunger because he made some stew, and Esau came in from hunting and wanted some stew to eat, drink, and Jacob said, "You can only have it if you give me your birthright as the firstborn son." And then later on, with the help of his mother, Rebecca, Jacob cheated Esau out of his father's blessing. He got a second-rate blessing, Esau, and Jacob got the first blessing. And so Jacob and Esau parted as enemies. And the story we read today comes from 20 years later, when Jacob is anticipating meeting up again with Esau. And God said to Jacob, "Return to your country, to your kindred, and I will do you good." Genesis 32, verse 9. And in spite of God's assurance, Jacob was afraid and greatly distressed. He divided his whole family into two companies, his herds and flocks as well, thinking that if Esau were to destroy one company, the other could escape. He prayed to God, even though God said, "I will do you good, deliver me, please, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I am afraid of him. He may come and kill us all, the mothers and the children." But the night before he was to meet Esau, Jacob was alone, and the Bible says a man wrestled with him till daybreak. And Jacob would not let the man go until he had blessed him. What an energetic prayer it was, for Jacob found he was wrestling with God. If Jacob could survive this encounter with God, then surely he could survive the encounter with his brother, estranged brother Esau, in a few hours' time. God came to him and reassured him in a strange way. We may have compassionate hearts, we may have sinful hearts, we may have hearts dominated by fear, but then we also may have lonely hearts. There are those who say that loneliness is one of the greatest problems in our Western society. Increasing numbers of people live alone. Many don't get involved in community groups. The breakup of marriages and de facto relationships is frequent, showing that some find it hard to live with others, many find it hard just to live with themselves. And unlike Pacific Island peoples, with their extended families, we are organised around the nuclear family, and more people are living alone, especially as we live longer. Living alone does not necessarily mean loneliness, but it makes loneliness more likely, especially if our mobility is limited or our hearing has gone. It is often a difficult life for someone who has lost a life partner of several decades. The Bible example I think of is the story of Naomi and Ruth. Naomi and her husband Elimelech and their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, escaped the famine in Bethlehem and migrated to a foreign country, Moab. It wasn't that far away, but it was foreign. And soon her husband died. Her sons married Moabite women, but about 10 years later, both sons died, and she was left in a foreign country with her two daughters-in-law. She decided to return to Judah because the famine was well past, and she believed that the hand of the Lord was against her, and she had become very bitter. And those people are hard to live with. However, her daughter-in-law Ruth insisted on coming with you. Where you go, I will go. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. She insisted on moving to Judah with her, and God provided for her and Ruth, and gradually Naomi's life was turned around to one of hope. You may have compassionate hearts, sinful hearts, fearful hearts, lonely hearts, but then we also may have stony hearts. I've often felt that my heart could do with some softening. As a teacher, I learned to be critical in my thinking. It was my job to tell students where they didn't measure up, and that is not always a good thing. I probably didn't tell them enough where they did well. And long before that, I grew up in a household where there was more reserve than expression of emotion. And I'm slowly learning to express more of my love to Jenny. I've been praying for God to soften my heart, and although I don't think I've done pretty well in the last couple of days, so there's still a work God's doing. Jenny and I, a couple of years ago, went on a camp, Father Stout camp, Christian camp down at Ryby, and my prayer at the end of that camp was, God, soften my heart. And I was very aware of the promise of Ezekiel of a new covenant, where he said to the Jewish nation in exile in Babylon, I will sprinkle clean water upon you. You shall be clean from all your uncleannesses. From all your idols I will cleanse you. A new heart I will give you, and a new spirit I will put within you. It's exactly what David prayed for. I will remove from your body the heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you and make you follow my statutes and be careful to observe my ordinances. Thank God for softening hard hearts. Have you seen God change people? If I was a preacher of an earlier generation, I would have started with this text from Psalm 62, verse 8. It reads, Trust in God at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Pour out your compassionate heart to God, and God will celebrate with you. Pour out your heart for others to God, and God will show his love through you. Pour out your sinful heart to God, and God will take away your sin and make you clean. Pour out your fearful heart to God, and God will give you peace. Pour out your lonely heart to God, and God will be with you. Pour out your bitter heart to God, and God will forgive you and give you the power to forgive others. Pour out your grieving heart to God, and God will comfort you. Psalm 62, verse 8, Trust in God at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Let's allow God to do his transforming work in our hearts. Have we yet discovered the truth? The psalmist declares that God is a refuge for us. Have you made God your refuge, your hiding place, a place of security. Whatever is on our hearts, whatever's in our hearts, we can share that with him and trust it to him. And he will be our refuge. A very simple step towards healthy hearts. Amen. Let's bring our offering forward, shall we?